name's Sam. I'm from a group called Prosper. We're helping to put on today's event. And I'm joined by the lovely Kate and the lovely Paul from Fujitsu. Here to answer your questions, and I probably don't speak on your behalf, but I'm sure you are both very keen to see some faces as well. This is a real opportunity to be a nice sort of intimate affair. Ask any questions you sort of want to feel, get ahead in the recruitment process and all that sort of stuff. So if you feel comfortable, chuck it on. If not, all good. But to kick it off, I might first start by throwing to Kate to do a bit of a quick introduction to yourself and the Fujitsu.
Thanks, Sam. Hey everyone, thanks for joining the call. As Sam said, my name's Kate and my role at Fujitsu is I lead the grad program. So that's for all of our grads across both Australia and New Zealand. So we recently onboarded 26 grads at the start of Feb, and we've opened our applications for a similar number of roles for next year's cohort who will start in February 2022. So definitely check them out on the Grad Australia website when you get a chance. I guess a bit of an introduction into myself is that I was at uni not too long ago, like yourselves. So I studied at Monash Uni to begin with, then I did my master's at the University of Melbourne, and I graduated in 2018. So I applied for the Fujitsu grad program in my final year of studies and I was obviously successful with my application, and I started at Fujitsu in the start of 2019. And since then, finished the grad program at Fujitsu and have now found myself in this role leading the program. So I've come full circle. And I guess that's a bit of an insight into myself from a very, very high level. I'm more than happy to answer questions about the grad program, obviously, but also about my personal journey, if you have any questions about that, as well as the recruitment process and, our 2022 program as well. So looking forward to your questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Kate. Paul, can you give us a quick intro as well?
Sure. Thanks, Sam. Hi, everybody. Great to have you on the call. Thanks for making the time. And we really appreciate you taking interest in Fujitsu's graduate program. So I'm part of the same team as Kate here at Fujitsu. So we're part of the talent management team. So we certainly consider our graduates talent when it comes to the employees that we prioritize their development and experience at Fujitsu. So I really support Kate as part of her role in running our graduate program. Our real focus is really around, as Kate touched upon, attracting graduates, onboarding them effectively. Our key focus is around ensuring that all of our graduates have a great experience in terms of the development they receive whilst they're on the graduate program. So our graduate program currently runs for 12 months. And as I think Kate mentioned, or as you probably know, we're looking for our 2022 graduates to be starting in early February next year. So it's been a while since I was a grad, but I too once was a grad. I've in terms of my background, I've been at Fujitsu for just over 3 years. I'm up to my 4th graduate cohort with a group that started at the start of February. I think I worked out for that cohort, that is my 13th cohorts of graduates I've worked with over my career. So I essentially learned how to run graduate programs at Commonwealth Bank. So back then, we take on, in the 4 cohorts we've worked with here, we've had anywhere from 50 1 year to sort of 25, 30 over the last couple of years. When I was doing grad programs at Commonwealth Bank, we used to take on 6,000. So I feel like I've got sort of pretty good exposure to all sorts of graduate program questions and concerns and anything anyone might be anxious about or might want to know about. As Kate mentioned, really want to use the opportunity that we've got with you guys to dive into any questions or comments or concerns that you might have about Fujitsu's graduate program.
Awesome. Thanks, Paul. We might start jumping into some questions now. Now, I've got a couple that were pre-sent through that I've got handy, but for everyone on the call today, if there's a particular question you might have, feel free to write it into the chat box. I'll just pop it up here. Right, your questions here. And let us know if you're happy to take yourself off mute. Again, I know both Kate and Paul are keen to see some faces and hear from you directly, even if you don't have your camera on. That would be great as well. But if you prefer for me to read them out on your behalf, just let me know as well. But yeah, just chuck them in the chat function when you're ready. But I might start with a quick question for both of you, but maybe particularly for Paul. What is like the most important piece of advice you'd probably give students aspiring to work both within Fujitsu and just in the wider sector more broadly?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sam. Like I say, it's been a while since I personally was in that position, but I think what I can bring to this discussion is the conversations I get to have with our graduates. So as Kate mentioned, our 2021 cohort, they only started at the beginning of February. So they're not even 8 weeks into their role. But I think if I'm where you guys are at, my couple of pieces of advice, and I think they go hand in hand, are try to be open-minded about industry, company. When you're looking for a role as part of a graduate program, try to be open-minded. Don't sort of, I think the ideal is to not close your willingness off to any option. Be prepared to explore every option. And I think sort of sub to that is, whilst you've obviously spent the last few years shedding a lot of blood, sweat and tears around the degree, don't get super wedded to the idea that, right, I must go and find a job in an industry that is, for me, some perfect alignment to my degree. So if I use Kate as an example, Kate did marketing, was recruited into our company in our architecture business, which, and I won't lie, I don't claim to be an expert in, our architecture. That's like technology architecture. I'm not an expert, but I know enough about it to know it doesn't have a real obvious alignment to someone that's done a marketing degree. And then Kate spent most of her career at Fujitsu in HR. So, that was an example of Kate did marketing and then accepted a role in architecture. So that's kind of a classic example of being open-minded, being open to trying stuff, and not limiting yourself to a very sort of narrow stream of the types of jobs you look for. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, definitely. I think. Kate, same question. Most important piece of advice you'd give Grace?
I definitely would echo what Paul has said about keeping an open mind, but also I think to understand that university is only the foundation for your learning. So you'll all learn so much more from experiences following uni that definitely have not crossed your minds yet whilst you've been studying. So I think that definitely backs up the keep an open mind, but also to learn from those that are around you and be open. There's a quote that someone once told me, it was learn to listen and listen to learn. So there's a lot to learn from experiences and the ideas of other people. And it's a really, really important tool also in building relationships. And I think that that's helped me a lot along the way. Also being open-minded, as Paul said, I applied for a role I actually didn't know that much about, and I didn't know much about Fujitsu, but I was quite proactive about learning more about the company, and there were elements that definitely did catch my interest. And I think that I was just open to a lot of different opportunities, and I found myself in this role that I would never have imagined. And I know that initially I remember people used to speak to me at uni and give me similar advice, and I'd kind of think, kind of easier said than done to just say yes to opportunities. And it's really hard when you're at uni and you have everything mapped out in front of you, and people are saying that maybe the workforce is a little bit more vague than that. But I think just take it in your stride, and if you are open-minded, it'll all happen in front of you, and the opportunities will come.
Fantastic. While we're on the topic of applications and things like that, is there anything in particular that Fujitsu looks for in an applications? like in an application from a student? Is like there anything in particular that students need to do to show, to progress to the next round?
Yeah, so we have quite extensive application process. So it is in line with a lot of other companies. It starts with an online application, then you've got cognitive testing, video interview, and then a group assessment center, followed by an interview with our hiring managers. So there are a few little things here and there that you can do to stand out, but really, I think my piece of advice would be that we're looking for people whose goals and attitude complement Fujitsu. So it's not always about your uni mark. And we want a range of different people as well. There isn't the perfect candidate. So I think my advice would be to be yourself throughout the process and describe and focus on what makes you different and what would make you an asset to our graduate program in particular. I think one of the main reasons why we recruit grads and why many companies recruit grads is because they bring a really different perspective. So I really would encourage all of you in all of the, I'm sure you're applying for a lot of other grad programs as well, but always remember what is it that I can bring that's unique to this particular company. Paul, what would you add to that?
I think that's a great overview, Kate. It gets me thinking about the virtual assessment centres we ran last year. So as I think everyone on the call would understand, obviously given COVID last year, historically we, like really all organisations, as Kate's described, particularly that assessment centre component, pre-COVID, you would come to one of our locations around Australia or New Zealand and participate in what was typically a kind of half-day assessment centre in person, along with all the other candidates that were applying for roles at that time. But if I think back to those virtual assessment centres we ran last year for the guys that have just started now, I remember thinking, having sat in on a couple of those, actually, I think I was supposed to be doing more than sitting. I think I was present in some of them. And it struck me within a couple of minutes. So one of the things we did in those virtual assessment centers last year was put, we might have had, Kate can remember the exact number, we might have had as many as, 15, 20 different applicants on one virtual assessment center. And what we did was put you in little groups in like breakout rooms on Zoom and give you some sort of scenario or challenge or whatever to work on as a group. And I'm watching everyone on their cameras, and I think I was there as an assessor. I should probably remember. And I straight away thought, this is what these guys are doing. It's like what you do at uni, where you work with a group of 4 or 5 of you, and it sounded straight away like uni mode. But I think which was understandable given they'd just come out of uni. But I think the thing that stuck in my mind, to Kate's earlier point about being yourself, is that when you are in that group setting, and it is starting to give you a taste of what it's like in the workplace. So if you think about even like this, when you are in the workplace, particularly in the current COVID climate, where you'll be on a call with half a dozen other people, and you're expected to be making great contributions and meaningful contributions. I remember back to those assessment centers, given how long I've been kind of paid to spot and manage talent, you can see those people stand out within the first 3 minutes. Those that are themselves and are proactive in contributing. And it's not even about taking a lead. It's about being proactive and being yourself. And you are really, from that assessment center standpoint, as Kate mentioned earlier, that assessment center approach is common across many companies when they're doing things like recruiting graduates. As difficult and as awkward as it might be, you might not necessarily be someone that is comfortable kind of speaking up in that sort of group environment. I think from an advice standpoint, you've got to find a way. You've got to find the courage for one of them. Otherwise, assessors, they'll forget you, or they won't notice you. So you've got to find, and again, like Kate said earlier, I know it's easy for Kate and I to sit here and say it, But I think the thing I would encourage you all, I guarantee you will find, and this I think goes into the work side of things as well. Once you get a job, once you start doing that, actively contributing in a group environment that's not uni, and you're kind of being put on the spot a little, so things like having to solve some business challenge you don't really know anything about, you will definitely find that once you do it once, and you hang up off of that call and go, you know what, I was pretty happy with what I did. You just start flying, and it just builds your confidence. But yeah, my main thing is step forward, make yourself known, have your say, contribute. Because from a grad assessment standpoint, those assessing you, they'll just forget you. If they don't notice you, they won't remember you.
Really good advice there from you both, Kate and Paul. There's a great question here from Sam about the great name, about the roles on offer. Can you tell us a bit more about that, and maybe even building on that? Can you tell us a little bit more about what Fujitsu does in Australia and New Zealand as well? I'm sure that sort of
absolutely. That. I guess we probably should have started. With that maybe. Okay, so the roles that we're hiring into, we have offices across Australia and New Zealand. Specifically for our 2022 intake next year, we're hiring into both internal and customer-facing positions. So finance, sales, customer service management, and then more of like the IT technical functions vary from data and applications, architecture, cybersecurity. We've got roles in strategy and marketing, so really across the board. And if any of those sound interesting to you, definitely go onto Grad Australia, onto our profile, and check out the individual job descriptions, because they're all really, really different roles. And it says what we're looking for each role as well, in terms of university degrees and different traits and characteristics. So definitely have a dive into those further. As for the second part of your question, Sam, what does Fujitsu do? And this is a lot of people ask me this question initially as well, because they think that we're an air conditioning company a lot of the time. So it is a number one question at career fairs and when speaking to students. But specifically for those that aren't aware, Fujitsu is a Japanese originated global business-to-business IT company. So what we do is we help other businesses undergo digital transformation, and that's by providing them with a lot of different services and solutions. So as I said, cybersecurity, cloud IT, software, artificial intelligence. And we work across a really wide range of industries. That's something that sparked my interest when I first applied. So our customers are those that you and I already interact with on a day-to-day basis, whether directly or indirectly. So we've got customers in retail, in transportation, so Woolies, McDonald's, Australia Post, Qantas, some really big names there that a lot of our grads end up actually working on those customer accounts, either on the grad program or following the grad program, or some of their team members do, or their manager does. And yeah, I guess I share those examples because the scope of work of what we do is so wide. And yeah, essentially we are our customer's customer, which I think is really cool. I think that covers everything that Fujitsu does. Paul, do you have anything to add?
No, I think that's a really great overview, Kate. I mean, as you say, and as I think hopefully everyone on the call knows, so the air conditioning in Australia is a sister company of ours. But the company that Kate and I work for in Australia and New Zealand is absolutely HQ'd in Japan. And it is, again, as I'm sure all of you would know, it's an iconic global technology organization. Yeah, we're kind of, Roger Federer type status. I think we're in something like 160 countries globally, which again, for graduates, and obviously, COVID is still a challenge, obviously, but, I know something that's always been quite attractive for a lot of graduates here in the cohorts that I worked with is that, we are in 160 countries. We've had a number of graduates in the time that I've been here move country internally, quite a number, because, they were at that stage in their life, they could do that, they wanted to do that. It was a simple kind of move. We helped, facilitate that process for them. So I think, nothing much more than that other than what Kate's mentioned. I think the big part is, which I think is appealing for everyone in our organization, no matter what kind of role you do, is the variety. Particularly as Kate did a great job, I think, of outlining. I think the other big part or big customer that we work with, I don't think Kate mentioned, is we do a lot of work with the Australian Defence Force. So as you can all imagine, that's huge. But as Kate said, you think of all Australia and New Zealand's big companies, there aren't many that we don't have some form of partnership and involvement with. Coles, Woolies, Macca's, Australia Post, Westpac. I think Kate mentioned all those.
Kate, did you end up getting a chance to work across any particular big clients as well when you were very briefly doing the marketing role? I know you're doing HR now.
No,
so.
I didn't. Not during that brief stint, no. But a lot of our grads have. I have worked on with a few, or made connections with a few different Fujitsu employees across different regions, though, which has been really cool.
Awesome.
Other than the time zone differences, but yeah.
There's a question here from Kenny about opportunities for postgraduate students. Is there anything specific program-wise in that space, or is the actual graduate program open to postgrad students? Like yourself?
Yep, definitely open to postgrad students. You just have to have graduated within the last 2 years to be able to apply.
Yep, awesome. Is there many? Do you find many postgraduate students? Yourself is one, obviously, doing your masters. There a couple of them. Yep.
Yeah, we definitely do. Most have either completed their bachelor or postgrad degree, so it's often quite an equal balance actually between the two.
Awesome. Question here from Bhavesh. Apologies.
Right, if I jump in and ask it?
Oh yeah, definitely. Awesome.
All good, man. Yes, sir. Hey. So yeah, I was just asking because one of my friends is doing the graduation program this year. So yeah, I was just asking like
at Fujitsu?
Yeah. So he's doing it this year, and I just want to ask, and he's like sent photos of everything that he does. So I just want to ask, like, what do they actually do during the 12 months or like the period of the graduation program, the graduate program, and like how do they contribute to the company?
Because, I'm guessing the photos you've seen, Bhavesh, don't feature much work being done by this graduate.
I don't want to reveal any names.
I have a feeling I know. I've got a pretty strong feeling, but I think we know who you're talking about. He's not. He's very proactive.
Yeah.
Let's just say
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wanted to know, like, what kind of work they actually do and like how they contribute to the company, really. Because like what I think is like of a graduate, like if I was in like 2 years, I graduated in 23. So I'm just thinking like, I don't have much experience as soon as I come out of uni. So how do they, like, what do they do in that 1 year that kind of preps them to work at Fujitsu to get that experience?
That's a really, really great question. Really great question. Okay, so basically at Fujitsu, you're hired into a specific role. So it's not a rotational program. You can apply for many different roles, but if you're successful, you're hired into a specific role. And alongside that specific business area training with your manager, with your team, your roles and responsibilities, we have the graduate program, which is a bit, it's a broader development program that all of the cohort you'll go on together with all of the grads that were hired within the same intake. And it's a blended learning model, and it integrates lots of different sessions, lots of virtual modules, project-based learning. You learn from different leaders across the company, virtual networking, and there's lots of different courses that you go through as a cohort that are focused on developing you both personally, helping you gain a better insight into the wider business and your role and where you fit within the bigger picture. And yeah, they're also a really great opportunity for you to network with people across your cohort. So there's more role-specific training within your actual role, and then there's wider cohort activities and development and training opportunities as well.
Yeah, so I was just a bit unsure because when I was looking at the applications, it seems to be like, well, when I checked, there was 3 different streams, I'm guessing. So do those graduates like go in their own stream and then in the company, like they split up within the company, or they all do the graduate program together?
I'm not sure what you're referring to in regards to streams, but you would be hired into a specific role. So say I would be an HR graduate. I report into my manager daily, and my day-to-day work is with my manager and in my team. And then I do other broader training with the rest of the graduate cohort that are, say, in finance or in cybersecurity.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Does that clarify your?
Yeah,
Does that
yeah,
answer
yeah.
your question?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of looking for. Like, it's not like a generic thing, right? Like, they work on what they're applying for.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we said at the start, Bhavesh, despite what I think you might have seen from the photos, there is actual specific, actual proper work that is required to be done. Just to be clear, just to manage your expectations.
Bit of fun stuff, I'm sure, in O week when they're coming in.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like Bhavesh has seen lots of the fun stuff.
But do they to sort of build on from that as well? Like as you said, they're in specific roles, working on real projects from very, very early on.
Day one.
Yeah. Is there anything like, I mean, Kate, for example, do you have any anything you can draw on from your own experience, like any projects that you worked on? I mean,
Yeah,
besides...
sure. Gosh. Well, throughout the grad program, I kind of started by doing a secondment, so like a short-term assignment within the team. But I was in charge of leading what was kind of a process improvement strategy or a new project within the grad program to help grads complete short-term assignments and gain exposure to different areas of the business. So I was leading that project, I put together the process, and then I had to lead the business through that process and brief them on what it was that we were implementing. And it lives on today.
And I think Paul said at the start, like within, I can't remember how long of your program you were in before you got pulled out and you actually got to run the grad program more broadly itself. Do you see that happening? Not necessarily grads finishing the program early, but do you see that quite often this program develops that talent to really just run and hit the ground running very early on in their career?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a lot of the time down to the specific grads of taking initiative and leading their own development and really calling out, this is what I like to be working on. This is where I feel like I'm adding value to the company. But there definitely are the opportunities out there to progress your career really quite fast at Fujitsu.
Thanks, Bhavesh, for that great question. If you've got any more, feel free to let us know. But there's a question here about the eligibility of the program. From Kenny, could you just clarify that for everyone, Kate?
Yeah,
international
sure.
students and things like that. Citizenship requirements.
So the main eligibility criteria is that you have to be an Australian citizen or a permanent resident, and you have to have, as I said earlier, graduated from your degree within the last 2 years of applying.
Yep. And how's that for New Zealand students as well? Similar?
So same, New Zealand citizen, yeah.
Yep. Awesome. For students who land a job with Fujitsu, lucky enough to be a grad like yourself, Kate, is there anything you would give them as a bit of advice to survive and thrive in their first year? Any advice you give them for that? Is there anything they shouldn't do at all?
Oh gosh. Paul, can I handball this one to you?
Yeah, sure. and I feel like you'll come up with stuff. So I think Sam's question was, what should you do and what you shouldn't do? I think in terms of what you should do, and again, given Kate runs our graduate program and we've got a still relatively new cohort, as I say, the group that started at the start of February, Kate and I talk about these things all the time. So Kate's job, she's liaising with these 27 all day, every day. on all sorts of manner of questions you could possibly think of. So I think in terms of what you should do, be open. It's kind of like what I mentioned earlier. Once you've started, and I think it goes back to part of Bhavesh's earlier question. You're going to turn up on day one and you're going to have things explained to you. Okay, Bhavesh, I need you to do these things. And you're just going to be sitting there going, I have no idea what you're saying to me. I literally don't understand anything of what you just said to me, let alone how do I even do it? So my thing is just say yes and just jump in and figure it out on the fly. Now, I know that might sound a little loose, but I think the alternative, no, put the shutter, it's not really an alternative, to be frank. As Kate mentioned, we as an organization very intentionally hire graduates. This program in our organization has very, very strong support from both our CEO and our executive leadership team that spreads across Australia and New Zealand. So for us as an organization, we feel we invest significantly in graduates annually, hiring them. So in turn, we have expectations of graduates when they join the company, like we do of every other employee that joins. But, for me, from a broader talent standpoint within our organization, for me, graduates are our best and our brightest, and they are ideally our future executive leadership team members. But the starting point is to just say yes and be prepared to just jump in and have a go. And things will go wrong and you'll have train wrecks, but you'll also have successes. So the other big thing, if I think about what not to do, and again, if I think of this group that's just joined, and I've said this to this group, and I don't mind saying, Kate Pockney, even to this day, who's now, 2 and a bit years, still has a little bit of a tendency to do this. Be easy on yourself, especially in those first few months. So you come from uni where you are essentially, your fate is in your hands at uni. At work, it's not. And when you're a graduate, it's so far not in your hands. And we don't expect it to be in your hands. And we don't ask you to, be the single point of success for stuff. As Kate's talked to, we ensure you get extensive support from both, your managers and teams that you're part of, as well as Kate as part of her running the graduate program. But I think Kate and I were only talking about this morning, or I think I heard Kate yesterday for the new cohort. Kate ran a session for them on how do you increase your ability to be adaptable? How do you adapt to changing different situations? Because again, like at uni where things are quite structured for you and it's all quite predictable and you have a timetable that you follow, work is not that. Kate, on any given day, still in her role, Kate might turn up tomorrow with her diary full of things that she feels like she has to do tomorrow. And all it takes is one email from someone and her planned day is out the door. And you've got to be prepared to deal with that. So I think what not to do is beat yourself up about not feeling like you can control things that are outside your control. Hopefully that helps. I don't know if you want to add to that, Kate.
Yeah, I think I'd add on to that, just speaking from personal experience around that whole confidence piece and backing yourself and self-doubt, probably more so, which a lot of our grads and a lot of grads inevitably face when they're stepping into their first full-time job, understandably. I think that at uni, you're often accountable mainly just to yourself. And yeah, you'll do group projects with other people in your course, or you may partner with people, but at the end of the day, you're working towards a grade for yourself on a piece of paper, so you get that certificate. But in a professional environment, in contrast, there's a lot more at stake in the bigger picture, and you're not only accountable to yourself, but you've got your team, you've got your colleagues, your manager, the wider organization. And as I said, when I was in the grad program, I was given a lot of responsibility to run with projects that had my name written all over it and to revamp processes and shake things up. And there's those expectations there. And at the start, I definitely was not confident at all, but it was kind of a fake it till you make it kind of situation. Just because I was so new, and Fujitsu is quite a big company. But I think that at Fujitsu, you do have the support there. You do have the people to lean on, whether it's your immediate team or you get given a buddy that's a grad alumni, or there is a big alumni community, or myself as the grad program lead. You've got that support structure there. So I think my advice is back yourself. Know that you are hired for a reason. If you are successful in securing a role at a company, you're there for a reason. So back yourself in. And those skills will develop over time just through experience and on-the-job learning, really.
Yeah, I think, Sam, just quick, I would just add something to Kate. Kate made an exceptional point just there about, remember that, you know, when you get a job, someone as part of that interview and recruitment process, someone somewhere saw something in you. That's why you got the job. So I think it's important not to forget that. And as Kate said, you'll be nervous, and you'll be probably more than nervous. There'll be times where you'll be feeling terrified, and you probably won't be able to remember the last time you felt so terrified. And you'll stumble, and you'll crash, and you'll have train wrecks, and you'll have disasters. But you'll have wins along the way as well. I actually think, and I think Kate would agree, it's the train wrecks and disasters where you learn the most from.
And I'm sure there's plenty of support internally as well for the grads when they're feeling stressed and whatnot. Would you, any particular examples you might have?
Yeah, absolutely. As I spoke to before, you've got your immediate managers and teams, and then you've got people that are outside of your teams. And I think that's one of the great things about joining grad program is that it is so social, and you're joining with other people who are also navigating this new company and new roles alongside you that you can lean on. And we do, as I said before, training courses and sessions with all of the grads at the one time, whether it's virtual or where possible and safe to do so. We try to bring them all together for training courses. So definitely have each other to lean on, as well as alumni and more senior leaders as well.
Fantastic. I'm sure a lot of the grads on here are in the middle or potentially making applications right now. Is there, I know Kate particularly, it's not as much you doing this part of, reviewing resumes at this point in time, but I think it's another team. But is there any common mistakes you see grads make when they're applying for jobs? You can give a bit of a, what shouldn't they do in that process?
Oh, good question. I think I can't think of what you shouldn't do right now. Definitely what you should do, particularly in the early stages, if you're successful in, say, the video interview and you really just want to get your foot in the door and so that you can prove yourself in the group interview environment, I would say back yourself up with examples of how you can speak to, say the question is demonstrate a time where you've been adaptable, like I was speaking to before. Make sure that you can back yourself up with examples, and also say what your key learning was and how you embed that moving forward in how you're adaptable and how you've learned from the situation. The example doesn't always have to be positive. It can be, I crashed and burned, but at least I learned from it. And it shows that you have that ability and willingness to learn, and you have that growth mindset moving forward. Anything to avoid, Paul?
Yeah, I was thinking of things to, I think what I'd be doing, or what I'd recommend to the team is, when you spot a role at a company that you feel like I want to apply, do as much research into that company as you possibly can before you submit anything into writing. And when I say research, and it probably sounds a little bit intangible, but I feel like research specifically designed to give you a sense of what's the vibe I get from this company, and how do I think it becomes particularly important when you're putting stuff in writing. given that obviously once you've put it in writing and submitted it, you can't take it back. Trying to get a vibe of what do I think, what's the tone of that company. So I'll try and give you a quick example, and this is going to involve me using a slight kind of swear word, but I'll try and not use it. So I think of someone like an Atlassian. So when they talk about the type of people they do not tolerate at their company, they will say very publicly, in writing, very publicly, when I talk about the tone and the way they portray themselves in public, they will say, we Atlassian don't hire brilliant holes. That's Atlassian. We, as a Japanese, relatively traditional, we would never even dream of putting that kind of language in public. Now, I'm not saying we're better than Atlassian, but we're different. So when I say, try to get a sense of what's the vibe, what's the tone, because I think especially when you're putting things in writing and you're applying for stuff, it's about knowing your audience. What do I know about the company, that the person that's going to receive this application or my CV, how will they interpret not just what I've written, but the way I've written it? Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah. I think that's important. Yeah. I think that's important.
Yeah, I think to add to that as well, another advantage of doing that research is it's really obvious when people are writing a generic application and they're just sending it to 20 different companies. If you're not making it personalized, you're not going to stand out. So that's definitely another advantage of doing your research.
Yeah, quite often, like common tip, like articulate why that company particularly, not why you want to have a job. Why Fujitsu?
Well, and I think that's the other thing, going back to what we talked about doing some research in that company and trying to get a sense about what's the vibe is, you might do some research and you might be really wedded to Atlassian, for example, and you do your research and you go, based on the vibe I'm getting from them, I'm not sure this is the right place for me. Or you might alternatively look at another company and get a sense of the vibe and go, yeah, I wasn't so sure about company X, but it actually sounds quite good. So I think that trying to get a sense as best you can and really using whatever connections you can get your hands on. Because obviously always not the company website won't necessarily give you that as comprehensive vibe as you might like. Go to whatever lengths you can possibly muster to build your own point of view about, what's the vibe of this place and does it appeal to me? Because the other thing to Kate's point about, just having just your generic application, just fire it off to everyone. Ideally, you don't want to spend your time and effort sending applications to companies that you don't feel like are a good fit for you. So I think it's important, and I actually think this is really important. We've talked a lot on this call about what do we look for and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's important for applicants to also have their own sense about, is this company, do I think this company is a good fit for me in terms of what I think I value and what I'm looking for? I think it's 50-50.
Yeah, two-way process. For
sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. There's another question here from Sam, changing gears a little bit about COVID, how Fujitsu handled it, maybe from both a HR perspective and more broadly, and where you're clearly still hiring, which is fantastic. Was there much change there? Paul or Kate?
It definitely didn't slow down. It definitely changed our recruitment process for grads for last year, seeing as it was all virtual. But I guess from an employee perspective, we're really lucky at Fujitsu that we are an IT company. So it wasn't as difficult, I'm sure, as other companies to pivot to, say, working from home. We already offered that to employees to be able to work from home. And we had that flexible workplace in policy already there. My team, speaking from personal experience, primarily based in Sydney anyway. So me going into the office, it was more so to chat to other people from other teams, definitely networking opportunities, but I don't think that it's put me on the back foot at all being able to work from home. Right now, most of our offices are back and up and running, and everyone's able to go back in. There's definitely COVID safe measures and regulations in place. For example, we have an app where you have to check into a desk every day just so we can track everyone. But other than that, I don't see any lasting, really, really super negative impacts. I mean, obviously there's impacts with our customers as well, and it's impacted them, which has in turn impacted us. But yeah, Paul, do you have anything to add there to COVID?
Yeah, I would add a few things, Kate. And I think to pick up on your customer comment towards the end there, I know, so, you know, like certainly I think everyone else in Australia and New Zealand, like last March, you know, we were at work one day. I was here at our office at Macquarie Park on a Wednesday and got an email saying from tomorrow, nobody can come into the office anymore until further notice. So to Kate's point about pivoting, it was that fast in certainly Australia, certainly Sydney, where I was at the time, at work one day with this pandemic thing unfolding to work from home indefinitely from tomorrow. But as Kate said, for us as an organisation, our employees have been able to do that, you know, work from home as and when you need to, way before COVID. So in the grand scheme of things for our workforce, that requirement to suddenly start working from home wasn't any big of an issue. From a customer standpoint, I think we, like a lot of companies, when COVID really started to hit in Australia, were going, we're going to take a hit. You know, our customers will take a hit, so we'll take a hit. We're actually the complete opposite, much to our big surprise, because we had so many of our customers going, okay, we need help with our tech and our software and our solutions, and we need to very quickly get things in place that we would have never envisaged we needed. So Fujitsu, we actually need you more than ever. So we were not necessarily expecting that, but obviously very pleasantly surprised. And as Kate said, you know, today, you know, across Australia and New Zealand, our position is essentially to our workforce across both countries. I'm trying to think, is there any exception? I can't think of one. You are able, as a Fujitsu employee at the moment across Australia and New Zealand, to go into our offices in your local when and if you want to, but we certainly haven't. So you might have read when I talk about doing research into the companies, Japan, which is obviously the biggest, where Fujitsu has the biggest footprint globally. Japan have told their employees, you know, we're basically never mandating you must come back to work all the time now. We're not quite at that point in Australia and New Zealand at this point, but I'm comfortable in saying on this call, as it stands at the moment, I know through the role that I'm in, that the attitude of our executive leadership team at the moment is, you know, we don't like the idea of going to our workforce across Australia and New Zealand saying you must now all come back into the offices 5 days a week. Because the reality is all of our employees showed from March that they can do what our organisation needs them to do with just as much effectiveness and productivity. It doesn't matter whether you're sitting at Macquarie Park or Collins Street in Melbourne or Camberwell in Melbourne. It makes no difference. Kate in Melbourne, 6 months last year, wasn't even allowed to leave her house. Don't worry about going to the office. And she onboarded 30 graduates from her lounge room. So yeah, I think we were always in a good place with COVID, and we still are. That's obviously dependent on what the actual virus itself does, which obviously none of us can predict. But right now I feel like we're in a very good place in terms of how we handled it.
I think it says also a lot about the trust that the company has of employees. I know, for example, we onboarded grads in the midst of COVID, and we were sending them their laptops to their homes, and they didn't step foot in the office for months, and they were brand new employees. So it speaks a lot about the trust that the company has in our employees.
Yeah, I think that cohort that Kate onboarded in July last year, so for Australia, that was like COVID peak. So that cohort, I know certainly some of the Sydney ones at least, where I'm based, some of those Sydney graduates who started in July last year didn't set foot into a Fujitsu office until this calendar year because of COVID. Some of them set foot into our headquarters are in Macquarie Park in Sydney. Some of those Sydney grads never set foot in Macquarie Park until January this year because of COVID. But they still, Kate onboarded them. They slipped into their jobs. They did their jobs. It was different. It was weird. And, I don't think anyone would pretend to say it was ideal. But, that cohort, they're 4 months away from graduating now. So time flies.
And resilient, I bet, as
well. Yeah, they are. Well, and Kate and I often talk about that 2020 cohort. From day one, they faced challenges of which a grad cohort has never had to contend with in our company's history ever. And to their credit and to Kate's, and to Kate's incomparable leadership, like these guys are 3-4 months away from graduating. They've just slipped in, done their job, become part of our sort of work from home workforce, just like the rest of us, without missing a beat. And I'm reverse mentored by one of them. So Jessica, she mentors me rather than the other way around. She works with a customer. Her job is to work with a customer. That's all she's ever done, is work with one of our key customers in our financial services sector. Apart from getting to go to their Christmas party in the city last year, otherwise she's never left home to do her job. She meets the needs of that customer from her lounge room at home in Sydney. So yeah, COVID, I think we've gone to some length about Sam's question about how we've handled it, and we feel like we've done an exceptionally great job.
Where to from here, do you think? Not doesn't have to be necessarily COVID related, but I mean, don't share anything proprietary, obviously, but like where to for Fujitsu from here, moving forward? Where do you see Fujitsu making the most impact in the next 2, 3, 5 years even?
You want me to have a go, Kate, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. And it's a great question, Sam. I think right now is a really exciting time to be part of our organization for a couple of reasons. So as I've mentioned a few times, we're a big global iconic Japanese company run out of Japan, obviously. I want to say it was a little over 12 months ago now, we appointed a new president globally. His name is Takita-san. He is a bit of a younger guy. Don't know how old he is, but he's a bit of a younger guy. I think we've seen from him already, he's not what you'd probably expect from a sort of Japanese president guy. He's quite contemporary and progressive in his thinking. And I think one of the key messages I hear from him that he expects of us globally is a more clearly defined strategy with outcomes that we can measure about how do we contribute to society in every which way through the products and services that we offer to our customers. And when I say society, I mean the environment, marginalized members of society, people with disability, people of, certainly for here, Australia and New Zealand, we're very big on supporting First Nation and Maori people, that kind of thing. So, that our products and, we're big in the health sector. We've done some really cool work over the last 12 months or so, certainly here in Australia around, working with, so here at Macquarie Park, as some of you here in Sydney would know, we're straight across the road from Macquarie Uni, literally across the road. So we have our headquarters for Australia and New Zealand is Macquarie Park here in Sydney. We have a very close relationship with Macquarie Uni I can't even count how many different initiatives we work on Macquarie Uni with. One of the really cool pieces we did with them last year was around some technology to detect brain aneurysms. So, as we talked about earlier, the variety that we get exposure to now, but we continue to plan to play in, and really pushing the boundaries of technology to be able to make that better contribution to society. That's our vision globally. At a local Oceania level, timing is also ironically pretty good in that we also have, for our region, a still relatively new CEO, who I think, by memory, I think formally started in November. So he's still very new. He's already showing to Kate that he loves graduates. He's really, really into graduates. And he sees the value that they bring to the company. But he too is very big on, making sure that the work that we do in Oceania, so he has essentially come in, as a lot of new CEOs do when they join a company, he's come in and essentially reorganized our customer facing business to ensure that when we're closely aligned to sectors, so we have a retail sector, a financial services sector, and that we're set up to do obviously technology based, cool, new, pushing boundaries work with those big customers that we already have, as well as trying to get more brand new customers. So I think, I know that's a pretty long-winded answer to your question, Sam, but I think it's about being able to demonstrate the contribution we make to society through working with customers on cool new technology.
Awesome. Kate, anything to add at all in terms of what gets you excited about the future of Fujitsu?
I think the only other thing that I was going to add there is the focus on working with the customer and how Fujitsu is very much around co-creating with the customer. Sometimes customer comes to us with a problem, they don't know what the solution is, and we work with them. We've got a digital transformation center over at Macquarie Uni, actually, that we work with customers in. We also have a virtual version. Sometimes a customer comes to us and they feel like they have the solution already, and then we can implement the solution. So it's very much about working with the customer to provide them with the solution that they need. And that's super, super exciting.
There's one final question from Bhavesh, and I think we'll handle that one. And then I've got a final question for both, a very, very quick one for both Kate and Paul. But Paul, this might be a good one for you, actually. Bhavesh, do you want to take yourself off mute again?
Or right, I can jump on this one. Yes. So yeah, I just want to ask, still as a student, I'm in my third year. Obviously, it's a bit early for the grad programs and everything. So I just want to ask, is there any way to get involved with Fujitsu and all their programs or is there any opportunity to get involved? You mentioned that you used to do things. I mean, you still do at Macquarie Uni, but I'm at UCID, so I'm not too sure if I could come into that. So yeah, I just want to ask if there's any way.
Yes, I think the short answer to your question, Bhavesh, is yes. We're always open to talking to students to understand, what are you interested in getting some exposure to? What sort of availability do you have? Now, that doesn't always equate to, okay, Bhavesh, here's what we can do. But from your perspective, in terms of where you're up to with your degree, Bhavesh, it's about, you, as it sounds like you're committed to doing, proactively looking for opportunities for you to get exposure to whatever you can. So as I say, yep, we're open to having the conversation about what are you interested in doing? Are there specific areas you want to get some exposure to? Obviously, part of the question, as I say, is what sort of availability have you got in and around your degree? And then seeing if we can find an opportunity in the company that aligns to what you're looking for. So as I say, just to be clear, the answer to that, can we find an opportunity, is not always yes. But we're always open to having the conversation.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, final question for both you both. Bit of a softball, but if they aren't already convinced, why should any of the students on the call apply for a role within Fujitsu? And I'll start with Paul first, I reckon. Yeah,
it's really easy for me, Sam. Yep. As I say to the current cohort that started at the start of February, the cohort that started in July. So as I mentioned at the start of the call, I've worked in Commonwealth Bank, News Corp, Channel 9, now Fujitsu when it comes to graduate programs. So I've worked on a lot of graduate programs. Kate Pockney is the 6th grad program lead I've worked with. At the moment, no other company has a Kate Pockney.
Well, Kate, your turn then, I reckon.
Oh, thanks, Paul. I meant to say the same thing back.
No, you don't have to say the same thing back.
I'm joking.
I'd rather you to. I know you weren't really going to.
The number one reason, and I think one of the reasons why I joined Fujitsu was because of the number of customers and the scope of the work that we do is really meaningful. It has a massive impact. We've spoken about a lot of examples of monitoring brain aneurysms, and we've got a police car of the future, and a lot of work in the sustainability area. And whether you work directly or indirectly on any of those examples, we make a really, really meaningful impact across a lot of different sectors. So that's something that really excites me about Fujitsu, and it keeps work really interesting, definitely, rather than just working on one company that has one fixed solution. We've got a lot of different portfolios of offerings.
Awesome. Well, I reckon pretty much right on time. We'll call it quits there. Thanks to everyone for joining today. Thanks for the questions, particularly Vesh and Sam and Kenny. I will again like to thank Kate and Paul for your time today answering questions. I hope everyone got a lot out of it. I know I definitely did. So thanks to you all. Definitely thanks to Kate and Paul, and we'll end it there, I reckon.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks everyone for joining. Really appreciate it.